She carried a red teddy bear. The boy pointed and said, "Daddy, it's her." Jessica Miller clutched the small, time-worn red teddy bear tightly against her chest as she hurried through the busy streets of downtown New York City. Her nervous eyes scanned every face that passed by, as if she expected to recognize someone at any moment. It was when she heard a child's voice that her heart stopped. "Daddy, it's her," shouted the 8-year-old boy, pointing directly at Jessica. The businessman Michael Thompson followed his son Ethan's gaze and felt his legs go weak. There, just a few feet away, was the woman who had disappeared from their lives 5 years ago. The woman he told everyone had abandoned them. Jessica tried to turn and run, but Ethan was already running towards her, his eyes fixed on the red teddy bear. "It's Teddy!" the boy exclaimed, stopping in front of her. "You promised you'd give him back to me when I was older." Tears began to stream down Jessica's face. How did that boy still remember? He was only 3 years old when she— "Ethan, come here right now," Michael yelled, approaching with his face red with anger. "What are you doing here, Jessica?" I can explain," she whispered, hugging the teddy bear tighter. "Explain?" Michael laughed bitterly. 5 years, Jessica. 5 years since you vanished from your own son's life, and now you show up out of nowhere carrying this ridiculous teddy bear. Ethan looked from one to the other, confused. He didn't understand why his father was so angry with the woman he had recognized from his most recurring dreams. "Daddy, she's my mom, isn't she?" The heavy silence was broken only by the sound of the surrounding traffic. Jessica knelt down to the boy's height, extending the teddy bear to him. "Yes, my love. I am your mother." Michael pulled Ethan by the arm. "You lost the right to call him that the day you decided to abandon us." "I didn't abandon you." Jessica stood up, her voice choked. "I never wanted to leave him." "Liar!" Michael exploded. "You walked out of the house and never came back. You left a note saying you couldn't be a mother, that you needed to find yourself. Don't give me that story now." Jessica shook her head vigorously. "What note? Michael, I never wrote any note. They took me by force." "They who?" "Your mother, Michael. Your mother and those men. I was sick, but it was nothing that couldn't be treated at home. She said it was for my own good, that I needed professional help." Michael felt a pang of doubt but quickly dismissed it. His mother would never do such a thing. "You're making up excuses. My mother told me everything. You said you weren't ready to be a mother, that you regretted getting pregnant." "That's not true," Jessica shouted, causing some people on the street to look. "I love my son more than my own life. Do you think I would carry this teddy bear all these years if I didn't want to get back to him?" Ethan broke free from his father and approached Jessica. "Why did you take Teddy away?" Jessica knelt down again, gently touching the boy's face. "I didn't want to take him, my love, but it was the only thing I had left of you. They wouldn't let me take anything else." "They who?" Ethan asked, his little eyes full of curiosity. Michael interrupted before Jessica could answer. "Enough of this talk. Ethan, let's go. Your grandmother is waiting for us at home." "No!" Ethan positioned himself between the two. "I want to hear. Why did Mommy leave?" The word Mommy hit Jessica like an arrow. She hadn't heard it in so long that she almost collapsed right there. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "Ethan, don't call her that," Michael said firmly. "She's not part of our family anymore." "But she's still my mom," Ethan insisted, with a stubbornness that Jessica recognized as her own trait. Jessica took a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket and handed it to Michael. "This is the medical report from when I was hospitalized. Severe postpartum depression," it said. "But look at the date, Michael. Look who signed the admission." Michael took the paper reluctantly. His forehead wrinkled when he saw his mother's signature as the legal guardian. This can't be right." "Your mother forged a power of attorney saying you were away on a business trip. She said I had tried to hurt myself and that it was dangerous to leave a child alone with me." "You tried to hurt yourself?" Michael asked, his voice a little softer. Jessica rolled up the sleeves of her beige coat, revealing fine scars on both wrists. "I was very confused, Michael. After Ethan was born, I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I knew something was wrong with me, But your mother said it was nonsense that all women went through that. Ethan gently touched the marks on Jessica's arm. Did it hurt? Yes, my love, it hurt a lot, but not as much as being away from you. Michael was visibly shaken. He remembered his mother always commenting that Jessica was too sensitive, too dramatic. But what if... Even if this is true, he said, trying to maintain his composure, why did you never try to get in touch? Why did you never look for us? Jessica laughed sadly. Michael, do you think I didn't try? For the first 2 years, I went to your house dozens of times. Your mother had hired security guards. They would throw me out before I even reached the door. That's a lie. I tried to call you at the office. Your secretary said she had orders not to put my calls through. I sent letters. They all came back with addressee unknown. Ethan tugged on his father's pants. Daddy, do you remember when Grandma burned those letters in the backyard? You said it was trash, but they had Mommy's name on them. Michael felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. He vaguely remembered the episode. His mother had said they were collection letters from a company that didn't even exist anymore. Ethan, are you sure about that? I am. I knew how to read her name because you taught me when I was little. I asked Grandma why Mommy's name was on the letters, but she said I was confused. Jessica felt a mixture of hope and pain. While she was happy to know her son remembered her, it hurt to know he had questioned it and been deceived. Michael, she said softly, I know it's hard to believe, but your mother never accepted me. From the first day you took me to meet her, she made it clear I wasn't good enough for you. My mother can be difficult, but she would never do something so drastic. She said you married me out of obligation, that I had trapped you by getting pregnant on purpose. Michael fell silent. That phrase sounded familiar. His mother had indeed hinted at something similar a few times. Daddy, Ethan interrupted. Can you take Mommy home? I want to show her my room. Ethan, it's not that simple. Please, the boy insisted. Grandma always says that Mommy left because she didn't love me. But if she loves me, why can't she come back? Jessica looked at Michael with pleading eyes. I don't want to cause trouble. I just want a chance to explain what really happened. And if possible, get to know my son. Michael ran his hand through his hair, visibly torn. Part of him wanted to send Jessica away and protect Ethan from more confusion, but another part, a part he was trying to ignore, missed the woman he had fallen in love with years ago. Okay, he finally said. But if you're lying, if this is some kind of scheme... It's not, Michael. I just want my son back. They walked toward Michael's car, a black sedan parked a few blocks away. Ethan walked between them, holding Jessica's hand with a naturalness that touched her heart. Mom, he said, testing the word, did you live far away? Not too far, my love. I always stayed close, hoping that one day I could see you. But why did you never show up at my school, or at the park where I play? Jessica looked at Michael before answering. Because people wouldn't let me get close to you, but I did go. I used to watch you play in the park, hiding behind the trees. I saw you learn to ride a bike. I saw when you broke your arm on the slide. Ethan stopped walking. You saw when I broke my arm? I did, and I cried so much that a lady who was at the park had to calm me down. But how did you know where I was? Jessica hesitated. The truth was she had hired a private investigator with the little money she could save working as a cleaner, just to know how her son was doing. A mother always knows where to find her son, she said diplomatically. When they reached the car, Michael stopped before opening the door. Jessica, I need to know one thing. If everything you're saying is true, why did you never get a lawyer? Why didn't you go to court? Jessica looked down. Michael, do you remember what I was like when we met? I was a waitress who had barely finished high school. Your family. You have money. You have influence. Who would believe my word against yours? He knew she was right. His family really did have important connections in the city, and his mother wouldn't hesitate to use those connections if necessary. Besides, Jessica continued, I was very sick in the first few years. I could barely take care of myself, let alone fight for custody. And now? Are you better? Much better. I've been in therapy for 3 years. I take medication when I need to. I've learned to deal with my depression in a healthy way. Michael nodded and opened the car door. During the drive home, Ethan didn't stop asking Jessica questions about where she lived, what she did, if she had other children. Each of her answers was given with so much affection that Michael began to seriously question everything he had believed for the past 5 years. When they parked in the garage of the house, a mansion in the Upper East Side neighborhood, Jessica felt a tightness in her chest. That was where she had been the happiest in her life, but also where she had suffered the worst humiliations. "Ethan," Michael said before they got out of the car, "I want you to promise me something. Don't tell Grandma that we brought Jessica here, at least not until we've talked more, okay?" "Why?" "Because Grandma might get worried, and we need to understand this whole situation better before involving more people." Ethan agreed, but Jessica noticed he didn't really understand why they needed to keep it a secret. The house was exactly as Jessica remembered. The same expensive furniture, the same heavy curtains, the same smell of furniture polish. She felt a wave of nostalgia mixed with sadness. "It's just like I remembered," she murmured. "You remember the house?" Ethan asked, surprised. "Of course, my love. I lived here with you and Daddy until you were 3 years old." Ethan ran to grab her hand and pulled her toward the stairs. "Come on, I want to show you my room." Michael followed them, still processing everything he had discovered that afternoon. Ethan's room was full of toys, books and drawings taped to the wall. Jessica was moved to see that he had grown up surrounded by love and care, even without her. "Look," Ethan pointed to a wall covered in drawings. "I draw you sometimes." Jessica approached and saw several sheets of paper with drawings of stick figures. On one of them, she clearly recognized a woman holding a little red teddy bear. "When did you draw this?" "Last week. I dream about you sometimes, and you're always with Teddy." Michael approached and looked at the drawing over Jessica's shoulder. That was impossible to explain with logic. How could Ethan dream about something so specific? "Ethan," he asked, "have you been drawing Mommy for a long time?" "Forever, but Grandma said it was just my imagination, that I was making up stories." Jessica turned to Michael with tears in her eyes. "Do you see? He never completely forgot me. Some part of him always knew I was still here." Suddenly they heard the sound of the front door opening and a familiar voice echoing through the house. "Michael, Ethan, where are you?" It was Mrs. Barbara, Michael's mother. Ethan looked at his parents with wide eyes. "It's Grandma." Michael gestured for Jessica to stay quiet and whispered, "Stay here. I'll go down and talk to her first." But it was too late. Mrs. Barbara was already coming up the stairs, complaining about the traffic and how long it had taken them to arrive. "Ethan, my little grandson, Grandma brought that cake you like." She stopped at the bedroom door when she saw Jessica. The silence was deafening. Mrs. Barbara turned pale as if she were seeing a ghost. What is she doing here?" Michael quickly came down the stairs with Ethan and Jessica right behind him. "Mom, we need to talk." "Talk about what?" Mrs. Barbara looked at Jessica with a mixture of shock and anger. "How dare you come back here?" "Mrs. Barbara," Jessica said softly, "I want to explain." "Explain? You abandoned my son and my grandson. What explanation could there possibly be for that?" "I didn't abandon anyone," Jessica said more firmly. "You had me committed by force." Mrs. Barbara let out a nervous laugh. "That's absurd. Michael, you're not going to believe these lies, are you?" Michael looked at his mother with an expression she had never seen before. "Mom, I need to know the truth. Did you really sign Jessica's commitment papers?" "Of course I did. She was out of her mind, Michael. She said she was going to hurt herself, that she was going to hurt Ethan. I couldn't let that happen. But why didn't you consult me? You were traveling, don't you remember? That trip to close the contract in Washington, D.C., I had to make a quick decision." Jessica shook her head. "Michael, you traveled 2 days after they took me. I remember because it was on Ethan's 3rd birthday. Ethan tugged on his grandmother's pants. "Grandma, is it true that Mommy was sick?" Mrs. Barbara knelt down to her grandson's level, speaking in a sweet tone that contrasted with the harshness she had used with Jessica. "Yes, dear. Your Mommy was very sick. And when people are very sick in the head, sometimes they do bad things. But she didn't do anything bad to me," Ethan protested. "I remember her. She gave me baths, sang me to sleep, played with me." "You were too little, Ethan. You can't remember properly. Jessica stepped closer. Mrs. Barbara, why did you never tell me that Ethan asked about me? Why did you forbid me from seeing him even after I got better? Because you had already done enough damage, Mrs. Barbara exploded. Do you think a child needs confusion in his life? Ethan was finally adjusting. He was happy. He never stopped asking about me, did he? Jessica pressed. Even after years, he still dreamed about me. Mrs. Barbara looked at Michael for support, but he was looking at her with an expression of growing doubt. Michael, you can't believe her. Think of everything we went through together these years. Who took care of Ethan when he had a fever? Who took him to school every day? Who was here when he cried missing his mother? And why did he miss her, Mom? Michael asked slowly. If she had really abandoned them, why would a child miss someone who rejected them? Because children are innocent. They don't understand when adults make bad choices. Jessica approached Mrs. Barbara, looking directly into her eyes. Mrs. Barbara, I'm going to ask you a question, and I ask that you be honest in front of your grandson. Did you really believe I was a danger to Ethan, or did you simply not consider me good enough for your family? The question took Mrs. Barbara by surprise. She looked at Ethan, who was watching her carefully, waiting for an answer. I did what I thought was best for everyone. That doesn't answer the question, Michael said. Mom, you never liked Jessica. From the first day I brought her home, you made it clear you didn't approve of our relationship. Because you were too different. She came from a family with no structure, no education. You deserved someone better. Someone from our social class, you mean? Michael said bitterly. Ethan, who had been listening to everything in silence, suddenly asked, Grandma, was it you who burned the letters with Mommy's name? Mrs. Barbara became visibly nervous. What letters, dear? The letters you burned in the backyard. I saw her name. You must have been confused. I wasn't confused, Ethan said with a firmness that surprised the adults. I knew how to read her name, and you said I was making it up. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. Michael approached his mother with a serious expression. Mom, how many letters did Jessica send? Michael, that doesn't matter now. It does matter, he shouted, making Ethan jump. How many letters did she send asking about her own son? Mrs. Barbara sat down heavily on the sofa, as if the weight of the situation had finally hit her. Many, she admitted quietly. She sent letters every week for the first 2 years. And you burned all of them. I was protecting you. Ethan was starting to get used to her being gone. If he knew she was trying to make contact. He had a right to know, Jessica exploded. He had a right to know that his mother hadn't abandoned him. You did abandon him. Mrs. Barbara stood up, pointing her finger at Jessica. The moment you decided to hurt yourself, you abandoned your role as a mother. I was sick, Jessica shouted back. I needed help, not to be taken away from my son. Ethan started to cry. The noise and the tension were too much for him. Please stop shouting, he sobbed. Michael immediately knelt beside his son. Sorry, Ethan. Adults sometimes get upset, but we're not fighting with you, okay? I just want to know why Mommy had to leave, Ethan said through tears. Why couldn't she stay with me? Jessica knelt on the other side of Ethan, gently touching his face. Because I was very sad, my love. Sometimes mommies get very sad after babies are born. It's an illness that makes you confused. But you're not sad anymore. No, my love. Now I know how to take care of the sadness when it comes. Ethan looked at his grandmother. Grandma, if Mommy isn't sick anymore, why can't she stay with us? Mrs. Barbara found herself without an answer. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that you had acted out of prejudice and wounded pride? Michael stood up and faced his mother. Mom, I need to know everything. Every lie, every intercepted letter, every time she tried to make contact. Everything. Michael. Everything, Mom. My marriage ended because of your manipulations. My son grew up without his mother because of your lies. I deserve to know the full truth. Mrs. Barbara looked around the room, as if searching for an exit. But all her lies were unraveling before the eyes of her son and grandson. "All right," she finally said, "but I want you to understand that everything I did was out of love for this family." "Tell us," Michael said dryly. Mrs. Barbara sat down again, her hands trembling slightly. "Jessica really was suffering from postpartum depression. That is true. But she didn't try to hurt herself until after I started complicating things for her." "What do you mean, complicating?" "I criticized everything she did with Ethan. I said she didn't know how to take proper care of him, that she was doing everything wrong. I hired a nanny without consulting you, said it was to help, but it was really to show that Jessica was incompetent." Jessica felt her breath quicken. She remembered perfectly those confusing days when nothing she did seemed right. "Go on," Michael said, his voice growing colder. "When Jessica started showing more severe symptoms of depression, I convinced you that she was exaggerating. Remember, I said it was just her being dramatic, that she just wanted attention." Michael closed his eyes. He remembered. He had questioned several times if they shouldn't get professional help for Jessica, but his mother always downplayed the situation. "When you traveled to Washington, D.C., Jessica had a more serious episode. She really did hurt herself, but it wasn't an attempt to do something irreversible. She was cutting her arm because she said the physical pain relieved the emotional pain. And instead of taking her to a psychologist, you had her committed to a psychiatric clinic," Michael finished. "I thought it would be for the best that she would get professional treatment." "Lies," Jessica interrupted. "You chose the strictest clinic in the city, a place where they treated patients like prisoners, where I couldn't have visitors, couldn't make phone calls. It was the treatment protocol." "It was a prison!" Jessica shouted, "and you knew it when you put me there." Ethan was watching everything with wide eyes, trying to understand the complexity of the adult situation unfolding before him. Michael ran his hands over his face, visibly shaken. "Mother, do you have any idea what you did? You destroyed a family. You destroyed an innocent woman's life. You made my son grow up believing his mother had abandoned him." "I was trying to protect you." "Protect us from what?" Michael exploded. "From love? From the possibility of us being happy? Or just protecting your wounded ego because I married a woman you considered inferior?" Mrs. Barbara began to cry. "I didn't want it to be like this. I thought that with time you would forget, that it would be better for everyone." "Better for everyone." Jessica stepped closer. "Do you have any idea what I've been through these 5 years? Working as a cleaner, living in a one-room studio apartment, saving penny by penny just to pay an investigator to tell me how my son was doing." You had us investigated?" "Of course I did. It was the only way to know if my son was okay. I knew when he was sick, when he got good grades in school, when he broke his arm, because I never stopped being his mother, even when you prevented me from acting like one." Michael looked at Jessica with an expression she couldn't decipher. You knew everything about his life?" "Michael, I have a folder at home with his school photos, report cards the investigator managed to get copies of, medical reports. I have 5 years of my son's life documented because it was the only way to be part of it from a distance." Ethan approached Jessica. "Do you know that I learned to ride a bike?" "I know. It was on a Sunday, at the park near the school. You fell 3 times before you managed it. And when you did, you yelled, 'Look, Daddy, look, Daddy,' and your father lifted you up in the air." Ethan was speechless. "How do you know that?" "Because I was there, my love, hidden behind a tree. But I was there." Michael felt a lump in his throat. The idea of Jessica watching their son's life from the shadows, unable to participate, was more painful than he could process. "Jessica," he said softly, "why did you never try a lawsuit? Even if it was hard, you could have tried." Jessica sighed deeply. "Michael, I did try. In the first year after I left the clinic, I went to 3 different lawyers." "And what did they say?" "That it would be hard to prove the hospitalization was unjustified, since there were medical reports confirming I had psychiatric problems, that your family had the resources for a long and expensive legal battle, and that—" She hesitated. "And that what?" "That a woman who had been committed to a psychiatric clinic would have little chance of winning custody of a child, especially against a father with financial stability and a structured family. Michael felt anger growing inside him, but not directed at Jessica, directed at the situation, the circumstances, his mother's manipulations. "Mother," he turned to Mrs. Barbara, "do you have any idea of the injustice you committed? Michael, I know I made mistakes, but—" "Mistakes?" He laughed bitterly. "You orchestrated a separation based on lies and prejudice. You deprived my son of having a mother, and deprived Jessica of raising her own son." Mrs. Barbara was clearly remorseful, but the damage was already done. Ethan, who had been quietly watching the adults' conversation, suddenly asked a question that took everyone by surprise. "Mommy, do you want to live with us again?" The silence was heavy. Jessica looked at Michael, who avoided her gaze. "My love," she said carefully, "that's a decision Daddy needs to make too. It's not just about what I want." "Daddy?" Ethan turned to his father. "Can Mommy stay?" Michael found himself in an impossible situation. Part of him was still processing the whole revelation, trying to separate the feelings of guilt from the anger he felt toward his mother. Another part of him looked at Jessica and saw the woman he had fallen in love with years ago. "Ethan, it's complicated. A lot has happened. But if you loved each other before, can't you love each other again?" The innocence of the question touched the hearts of everyone present. Jessica felt tears stream down her face. "Sometimes love isn't enough, my love. Sometimes people hurt each other very much, even without meaning to." "But did you hurt Daddy, Mommy?" "Not on purpose. But my illness caused a lot of confusion, a lot of pain for everyone." Michael looked at Jessica and for the first time in years truly saw her. Not the woman he believed had abandoned them, but the woman who had suffered unjustly and fought to get back to her family. "Jessica," he said softly, do you still love me?" The question took her by surprise. During all those years, she had focused so much on getting back to Ethan that she hadn't even allowed herself to think about the feelings she still had for Michael. "Michael, I never stopped loving you. But I understand if you can't forgive me for everything that happened." "Forgive you for what?" He moved closer to her. "For what my mother did. For the lies I believed. Jessica, if anyone needs forgiveness here, it's me. You didn't know." "But I should have known." Michael exploded at himself. "I was your husband. I should have questioned more. I should have investigated. I should have trusted you more than my mother." Jessica gently touched his face. "Michael, we both suffered. We were both victims of manipulation. There's no use blaming ourselves." Ethan, who had been watching the moment between his parents, suddenly ran to grab the little red teddy bear that Jessica had left on the couch. "Teddy wants you to stay together," he said, making the teddy bear talk with a different little voice. Everyone laughed through their tears. It was the first moment of lightness in that entire afternoon, loaded with painful revelations. "Ethan," Michael knelt down to his son's level, "would you like Mommy to come back to live with us?" "Of course. Then she can put me to sleep again and sing those songs I remember." Jessica smiled. "You remember the songs I used to sing?" "I remember one." "How did it go again?" Ethan thought for a moment and began to hum a melody softly. Jessica recognized it immediately. It was "Rock-a-Bye Baby," the same song she sang every night before he went to sleep. "Rock-a-bye baby, in the treetop, when the wind blows the cradle will rock," she sang along with him. Michael felt a shiver. That was exactly how they used to put Ethan to sleep years ago. The memory of those happy moments came back with full force. Mrs. Barbara, who had been silently observing the family reunion, finally spoke. "Michael, Jessica, I know I have no right to ask this, but can you forgive me?" Michael and Jessica looked at each other. The anger they felt was legitimate, but they were both emotionally exhausted to maintain the hatred. "Mom," Michael said, "forgiveness will take time. You can't expect me to forget 5 years of lies overnight. I understand, but I want you to know that I will do everything possible to make up for the harm I caused. How? Jessica asked. I will tell the whole family, all our friends, the truth about what happened. I will make it clear that you never abandoned Michael and Ethan. It was a start. It wouldn't erase the lost years, but it would at least restore Jessica's reputation. And one more thing, Mrs. Barbara continued, I will pay for family therapy for all of us, so we can learn to deal with this situation in the healthiest way possible. Michael nodded. Professional help would really be necessary to navigate all the complex emotions that were emerging. Ethan, Jessica turned to her son, how about if Mommy stays for dinner tonight, and we talk more about how we'll move forward? Yes, Ethan cheered. And can you put me to sleep tonight? Jessica looked at Michael, who nodded with a sad smile. Of course, my love, it will be a pleasure. That night, for the first time in 5 years, Ethan fell asleep with his mother singing Rock-a-Bye Baby, and with the little red teddy bear Teddy in his arms. Michael stood in the bedroom doorway, watching the scene he had missed all those years. When Jessica came out of the room, she found Michael waiting in the hallway. Jessica, he said softly, I know we have a lot to talk about, a lot to work out, but I want you to know that I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry too, Michael, for the years we lost, for the confusion my illness caused. Your illness wasn't your fault, and the way it was treated, even less so. They stood in silence for a moment, listening to Ethan's calm breathing from the other side of the door. Michael, Jessica finally said, I don't expect us to go back to how we were before. A lot has changed, we've changed, but I would really like the chance to get to know my son again, and maybe, who knows, get to know you again too. Michael smiled, the first genuine smile Jessica had seen from him in years. I'd like that too. It was the beginning of a long journey of reconnection and healing. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be many difficult conversations ahead, but for the first time in 5 years, they had hope. Mrs. Barbara, who had observed everything from a distance, cautiously approached. Jessica, she said, her voice choked, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for what I did. Jessica looked at her mother-in-law, seeing an elderly woman broken by the weight of her own actions. Mrs. Barbara, what hurts me the most isn't what you did to me. It's what you did to Ethan. He spent 5 years believing his mother didn't love him. I know, and I will carry that guilt forever. But, Jessica continued, if you really want to make it right, I have one condition. Anything. I want you to tell Ethan, when he's old enough to understand exactly what happened. I want him to know that his mother fought to get back to him every single day for those 5 years. Mrs. Barbara nodded, tears streaming freely down her face. I promise. In the weeks that followed, the family slowly began the process of rebuilding. Jessica started spending weekends at the house again, initially sleeping in the guest room. Ethan was overjoyed to have his mother back, and Michael discovered that the feelings he held for Jessica had never truly disappeared. Family therapy was helping everyone process the complex emotions and find healthy ways to move forward. Mrs. Barbara was keeping her promise to restore Jessica's reputation, telling the truth to family and friends. 3 months after the reunion on the street, Michael asked a question that had been on his mind. Jessica, would you like to move back here, permanently? They were in the garden, watching Ethan play with his little red teddy bear Teddy. Michael, I would love to, but are we okay as we are now? I'm afraid that if we try to go back to what we were too quickly— I don't want to go back to what we were before, Michael interrupted her. I want to build something new, something based on truth, honesty, and mutual respect. Jessica smiled. Then yes, I would very much like to come home. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. And so it was that. 4 months after the reunion on the busy street of New York City, Jessica officially returned home. But this time, she returned not as the young, insecure wife who had left, but as a strong woman who had survived injustice and the forced separation from her son. Ethan never again parted with his little red teddy bear Teddy, which became a symbol of the family's reunion. And whenever someone asked about the worn-out toy, he would proudly say, "This is Teddy. He helped my mom find me again." The first night Jessica was definitively back home was special. Michael had organized a simple dinner with all of Ethan's favorite dishes. Mrs. Barbara was also present, in an atmosphere that, although still carrying some tension, showed clear signs of healing. "Can I make a toast?" Michael asked, raising his glass of juice. Ethan wouldn't allow wine to be served when he was at the table. Everyone raised their glasses. "To second chances," Michael said, looking at Jessica. "To truth that set you free." He looked at his mother. "And to families that refuse to give up on each other." He touched Ethan's head. "Cheers," Ethan shouted, making everyone laugh. After dinner, Jessica helped Ethan with his homework, a mundane activity she had missed for years. It was about science, and he needed to draw a family tree. "Mom, how do I draw our family?" Jessica thought for a moment. Their family had been through so much. "How about we draw a tree that was broken by a storm, but managed to grow back?" "What do you mean?" "Sometimes trees go through storms that break their branches. But if the roots are strong, the tree can grow new branches, sometimes even stronger than the previous ones." Ethan liked the idea and drew a tree with broken branches, but also with new branches growing. On the trunk, he wrote the names of the whole family, including his teddy bear Teddy. "Our tree went through a storm, but it's growing again," he explained proudly. That night, for the first time in 5 years, Jessica put Ethan to sleep in the room that had once been hers and Michael's. Michael had insisted she return to the master bedroom, saying it made sense, since they were a family again. "Mommy," Ethan said sleepily, hugging Teddy, "do you promise you'll never leave again?" Jessica felt her heart tighten. She knew she couldn't make a promise about things beyond her control, but she could promise something more important. "My love, I promise that, no matter what happens, I will always fight to stay close to you. And I promise that if I ever need to be away for any reason, you will always know the truth about where I am and why." "Okay," Ethan whispered, almost asleep. "And Teddy promises too." Jessica laughed softly and kissed her son's forehead. "Good night, my love. Good night, Mommy." When she left the room, Jessica found Michael in the hallway, just like that first night. But this time the tension had been replaced by a shy but genuine intimacy. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Scared," she admitted. "Happy but scared. Sometimes I wake up and think this is all a dream, that I'm going to find out I'm still living in that studio apartment, just dreaming about this life." Michael stepped closer and gently touched her face. "It's not a dream, Jessica. You're home." They kissed for the first time in over 5 years. A soft kiss, filled with longing, forgiveness, and hope. "Michael," Jessica whispered, "thank you for giving me a second chance. Thank you for never giving up on us." The following weeks brought expected challenges. Ethan, though happy to have his mother back, sometimes had angry outbursts, asking why she had taken so long to return. Family therapy was helping him process the complex emotions of a child who had grown up without fully understanding why his mother had left. Jessica, in turn, struggled with moments of anxiety, especially when Ethan was out of her sight for extended periods. The years of forced separation had left emotional scars that took time to heal. Michael found that forgiving his mother was harder than he had imagined. Although he rationally understood she had acted out of distorted concerns, the anger over the lost years sometimes consumed him, and Mrs. Barbara carried the weight of guilt, struggling to find her place in the rebuilt family. She knew she would never be seen by her grandchildren and son in the same way again, but she was determined to gradually regain their trust. One day, 6 months after the reunion, Jessica found Mrs. Barbara crying in the garden. "Mrs. Barbara, what happened?" "Jessica, I found more of your letters today. Letters I had forgotten I hid in the attic." Jessica felt her stomach turn. "What letters?" "Letters you wrote to Ethan for his birthdays. Letters explaining where you were, why you couldn't be with him, how much you loved him." Mrs. Barbara held out a bundle of envelopes yellowed with time. Jessica recognized her own handwriting, more desperate and shaky in those early years. 5 letters, Mrs. Barbara whispered. 1 for each birthday you missed, all addressed to him, all with gifts you could never deliver. Jessica took the letters with trembling hands. She had forgotten about them, sent in the early years when she still had hope that Michael or someone from the family would pass them on to Ethan. Why are you showing me this now? Because I think you should give them to him, when you think he's ready to understand. Jessica looked at the letters. Each one represented a birthday she had spent alone, imagining what it would be like to be with her son. Each one contained words of love she had written in the hope that one day they would reach him. Mrs. Barbara, Jessica finally said, thank you for returning these to me. I know it wasn't easy to admit that you had them. Jessica, do you forgive me? Jessica looked at the elderly woman, seeing in her no longer the authoritarian mother-in-law who had destroyed her family, but a grandmother who had made terrible mistakes driven by fear and prejudice. I forgive you, Mrs. Barbara. But more important than that, can you forgive yourself? It was a profound question that touched the heart of the matter. Mrs. Barbara had been mentally punishing herself for the mistakes made, but she hadn't done the necessary inner work to truly forgive herself and change. I don't know, she admitted. No, Then that's what you need to work on, because Ethan needs a grandmother who is at peace with herself, not one burdened by guilt. That night, Jessica showed the letters to Michael. My God, he murmured, reading one of them. Jessica, this is devastating. The letter was from Ethan's 4th birthday. Jessica wrote about how she had spent the entire day in a park, watching children his age play, imagining what it would be like if she could be celebrating with her son. I was so lost in those early years, Jessica admitted. I wrote these letters because it was the only way I felt connected to him. Are you going to show Ethan? When he's older. When he can understand that even though I was far away, I never stopped thinking about him. 2 years had passed since the reunion. Ethan was now 10 years old and had a more mature understanding of the situation. The family had settled into a healthy routine, with Jessica working part-time as an early childhood teacher. She had resumed her studies after the reunion, and Michael adjusting his work schedule to spend more time at home. Mrs. Barbara had moved into her own apartment, but visited regularly, and had developed a genuinely affectionate relationship with Jessica based on mutual respect and their shared love for Ethan. It was on Ethan's 10th birthday that Jessica decided it was time to show him the letters. Ethan, she said after the party, I have something to show you. She explained about the letters, about how she had written to him every year, even though she couldn't deliver them. Ethan listened silently, turning the letters over in his hands. Can I read them? Of course, my love, they are yours. Ethan read the first letter, then the second. When he got to the third, his eyes filled with tears. Mum, you wrote that you wanted to teach me how to ride a bike. Yes, I dreamed about that. But you were there when I learned, remember? Hiding behind the tree. Jessica smiled through her tears. It's true, in a different way than I imagined, but I was there. Ethan hugged her tightly. I love you, Mom. Thank you for never giving up on me. I would never give up on you, my love, never. Michael, who had been watching the scene from a distance, approached. Ethan, how about we have a special ceremony? We can bury these letters in the garden and plant a tree on top. That way they will always be with us, but the pain they represent can turn into something beautiful. Ethan liked the idea. The following weekend, the whole family, including Mrs. Barbara, gathered in the garden for the ceremony. These letters represent the years we lost, Jessica said, holding the bundle of envelopes. But they also represent the love that never died. We're burying them not to forget, but so they can transform into something new. They dug a small hole, placed the letters inside, and planted a small jabuticaba tree on top. Jabuticaba tree, Ethan asked. It's a Brazilian tree that bears fruit right on its trunk, Michael explained. Just like our family. Even when it seems like all is lost, life can sprout in the most unexpected places. 5 years later, on Ethan's 15th birthday, the Jabuticaba tree was laden with fruit. The family had grown and transformed in ways none of them could have imagined. Jessica and Michael had made their reunion official with a simple ceremony in the garden under the Jabuticaba tree. Ethan, now a thoughtful and mature teenager, had become an advocate for causes related to mental health, inspired by his family's story. Mrs. Barbara, at 75 years old, had become a volunteer at institutions caring for women with postpartum depression, using her experience to help other families avoid the mistakes she had made. And the little red teddy bear Teddy, now clearly a childhood relic, still occupied a special place on the shelf in Ethan's room, reminding everyone that true love can overcome any separation. On a Sunday afternoon, as they picked jabuticabas from the tree planted over the letters, Ethan made an observation that deeply touched his parents' hearts. "You know what I learned from our story?" "What, sweetheart?" Jessica asked. "That sometimes people do bad things out of fear, but that doesn't mean they are bad people, and that true love always finds a way back home." Michael and Jessica looked at each other over their son's head, sharing a smile that contained years of overcome pain and realized hope. "And you know what else?" Ethan continued. "I think our family is stronger now than it would have been if none of this had happened." "Why do you think that?" Michael asked. "Because now we know we can survive even the most difficult things, and we know that love is worth fighting for." That night, Ethan wrote an essay for school about a person I admire. He wrote about Jessica, about her strength to survive injustice and her determination to never give up on the family. But the sentence that moved Jessica the most when she read the essay was the conclusion, "My mother taught me that being strong doesn't mean never falling down. Being strong means getting back up every time you fall and continuing to walk toward what you love." It was a lesson that had cost years of suffering for everyone to learn, but that now guided every decision of the rebuilt family. The story of the Thompson-Miller family became known in the community, not as a scandal, but as an example of redemption and second chances. Jessica often received invitations to speak at support groups for women with postpartum depression, always carrying with her a photo of the Jabuticaba tree as a symbol that life can be reborn even in the darkest moments. Michael changed how he conducted his business, becoming more empathetic with employees going through personal difficulties. He had learned firsthand how circumstances can be deceiving and how important it is to always seek the truth behind appearances. And Mrs. Barbara transformed her regret into action, dedicating her later years to repairing the harm she had caused, not only to her own family, but to other families who might be going through similar situations. When Ethan turned 18, he threw a special party in the home garden. Among the guests were his school friends, but also some of the women Jessica had helped through her work with support groups. One of them, a young mother named Amanda, approached Jessica during the party. "Jessica, I wanted to thank you," she said with tears in her eyes. "Thank me for what, dear?" "For showing me that postpartum depression doesn't make me a bad mother. For teaching me that I can seek help without being afraid of losing my son." Jessica hugged the young woman. "You are a wonderful mother, Amanda. Never forget that. How did you find the strength not to give up during all those years?" Jessica looked at Ethan, who was laughing with his friends near the cherry tree, and then at Michael, who was chatting animatedly with some of their son's classmates' parents. "Love, Amanda. Love is stronger than any injustice, any separation, any pain. It can lie dormant for a while. It might seem like it's disappeared, but if it's true, it always finds a way back." That night, after all the guests had left, the family sat in the garden under the stars. Ethan, now a young adult, had a question he had been holding on to for years. "Mom, Dad," he said, "do you think our story would have been different if I hadn't seen Mom on the street that day?" It was a question that sometimes haunted Michael. What if Ethan hadn't recognized Jessica? What if they had simply passed by each other in the crowd? "I think," Jessica replied thoughtfully, "that true love always finds a way. Maybe it wouldn't have been that day, but at some point, somehow, we would have found each other again." "Are you sure?" Ethan asked. "I am," she said with conviction, because during all those years, even in the darkest moments, I felt a force pulling me toward you, and that force never stopped. Michael took Jessica's hand. And I felt something too, Ethan. For years I tried to convince myself I was better off without her, but there was always an emptiness that nothing could fill, as if a part of me was missing. That's what happens with people who are meant to be together, Mrs. Barbara said, approaching the group. They can be separated by circumstances, but there is a connection that transcends time and space. It was rare to hear Mrs. Barbara speak about love so poetically, and everyone was surprised. "Grandma, how do you know that?" Ethan asked. "Because," she replied with a sad smile, "that is exactly what I tried to destroy and ended up discovering is indestructible." Ethan stood up and hugged his grandmother. "Grandma, you know I forgave you a long time ago, right?" "I know, my grandson, but more importantly, I finally managed to forgive myself too." It was an important confession. For years, Mrs. Barbara had carried the guilt like a self-imposed punishment. But through therapy and volunteer work, she had learned that forgiving herself didn't mean minimizing her mistakes, but rather allowing herself to grow and change from them. That night, as they were getting ready for bed, Jessica found Michael putting some old photos into an album. "What are you doing?" "Organizing our story," he replied. "I want Ethan to have a complete record of our family, including the difficult years." Michael had included photos from the early happy years, then a blank page with just a note, the lost years, 2018-2023, and then the photos of the reunion and the years of rebuilding. "Why did you leave the page blank?" "Because we don't have photos from those years together, but they are part of our story too. The suffering, the separation, the struggle to come back. All of that brought us to where we are today." Jessica touched the blank page. "You know what we can put here?" "What?" "A picture of Teddy. He was our connection all those years." Michael smiled and went to get the little red teddy bear from Ethan's room. They took a picture of the worn-out toy and pasted it onto the blank page with a caption that read, "Our Guardian of Love." 2 years later, when Ethan was in college studying psychology, inspired by the family's story and a desire to help other people in similar situations, he brought a girlfriend home to meet his parents. Olivia was a sweet and intelligent young woman who was fascinated when she learned the family's story. "It's incredible how you all managed to overcome all of this," she said during dinner. "The secret," Jessica replied, "is to never lose hope and to always be willing to forgive. Even when the injustice is very great, especially when the injustice is very great," Michael added, "because carrying anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. In the end, the one who suffers is you." Ethan smiled, proud of his parents. "Olivia, want to see something special?" He led her to the jaboticaba tree in the garden and told her the story of the buried letters. "Wow," Olivia murmured, touching the tree trunk. "It's as if all your pain had turned into something beautiful." "That's exactly it," Ethan said. "My parents taught me that it's no use trying to forget the pain. The important thing is to transform it into something that can help other people." That night, Olivia asked Ethan, "Don't you feel angry at your grandmother for what she did?" "Not anymore," Ethan answered honestly. "I did for a while, when I truly understood what had happened. But then I realized that Grandma was acting out of fear and prejudice, not malice, and that she spent the last years of her life trying to make up for her mistakes." "How were you able to forgive?" "Because I saw how forgiveness freed my family. When my parents forgave Grandma, when she forgave herself, when we all forgave each other. That's when we truly became a happy family." 5 years passed. Ethan had graduated with a degree in psychology and was doing a residency in family therapy. Michael and Jessica had celebrated 10 years of their second marriage, as they called it. Mrs. Barbara, now 80 years old, was still active in her volunteer work, but her health was beginning to weaken. It was on a Sunday in October that Mrs. Barbara called the whole family together for an important talk. "I want to talk to you about something," she said, sitting in her favorite armchair in the garden. Everyone gathered around her, Michael, Jessica, Ethan, and Olivia, who had married Ethan the previous year. "My health isn't very good," she began, raising her hand when Michael tried to interrupt. "No, let me speak. I'm not sad about it. Actually, I'm at peace. She looked at each one of them. I've lived long enough to see the mistakes I made turn into something beautiful. I saw my grandson become a wonderful man. I saw my son find happiness again. And I saw a woman I wrongly judged become one of the wisest people I know. Jessica felt tears welling up in her eyes. Mrs. Barbara. Jessica, I have something to give you. Mrs. Barbara held out a sealed envelope. What is this? It's a letter. A letter I never had the courage to give you, but that I wrote 5 years ago, when you came back to our family. Jessica opened the envelope with trembling hands and read aloud. Dear Jessica, there are no words to express the regret I feel for the years I stole from you and from our family. There are no excuses for the injustices I committed, driven by pride and prejudice. But I want you to know that watching your strength, your capacity to forgive, and your tireless dedication to our family transformed me. You taught me that true love knows no social class, does not bow to adversity, and always finds a way back home. You became the daughter I never knew I needed, and the mother that Ethan deserved to have from the very beginning. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your lives again, even after everything I did. With love and deep respect, Barbara Thompson. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden when Jessica finished reading. Mrs. Barbara, Jessica said, kneeling beside her mother-in-law's armchair. Thank you for this letter, and thank you for becoming the mother-in-law and grandmother our family needed. They hugged, two women who had started as adversaries and ended as allies, united by their love for the same family. 3 months later, Mrs. Barbara passed away peacefully in her sleep. In her will, she had left a letter for each family member and a significant donation to the institution where Jessica worked with mothers suffering from postpartum depression. At the funeral, Ethan gave a speech that moved everyone present. My grandmother made serious mistakes in the past, but she also taught me one of the most important lessons of my life, that it's never too late to change, to grow, to become a better person. She spent the last years of her life proving that genuine remorse can turn into wisdom and compassion. After the funeral, the family gathered at home, under the black cherry tree. Michael picked up a small sapling he had prepared. How about we plant a new tree, he suggested, in honor of Grandma and all that she taught us about redemption. They planted the little sapling next to the black cherry tree, creating what Ethan called the family garden, a space where each tree represented an important phase of their lives. 10 years had passed since the first reunion. The family had grown with the arrival of a little granddaughter, Barbara, named after her great-grandmother, and Ethan had become a respected family therapist who often told his family's story, with permission, to help other families in similar situations. Jessica, now 50, had become the director of the Postpartum Depression Support Center and was nationally recognized for her work. Michael had sold part of his business to have more time with his family and to dedicate himself to social projects. One afternoon, on Ethan's 25th birthday, as the whole family gathered in the garden that now had 5 different trees, each representing a phase of the family, little 3-year-old Barbara asked an innocent question that made everyone laugh. Grandma Jessica, why are there so many trees in the garden? Jessica knelt down to her granddaughter's level, holding the little red teddy bear Teddy, which now belonged to the new generation. Because each tree tells a part of our story, my love. Stories of separation and reunion, of mistakes and forgiveness, of pain and healing. And which one is my tree? Barbara asked. Your tree, Ethan answered, picking up his daughter, has yet to be planted, but when it is, it will represent joy, hope, and the certainty that our family has learned to love for real. Michael approached and hugged Jessica from behind, watching the scene of Ethan with his daughter. You know what I'm most thankful for in our whole story, he whispered in her ear. What? That our son grew up knowing that love is worth any fight, that he will never give up on someone he loves, because he learned that true love always finds a way back. Jessica turned in her husband's arms. And that our little granddaughter will grow up in a family that knows people can change, that mistakes can be forgiven, and that it's never too late for a fresh start. They kissed softly, while Ethan played with Barbara and the little red teddy bear Teddy, now a lasting symbol that true love knows no boundaries of time, space, or circumstances. That night, as had become a tradition on Ethan's birthdays, Jessica sang Rockabye Baby for Barbara, who fell asleep hugging Teddy, perpetuating a tradition that connected 3 generations through love, music, and a small red teddy bear that had witnessed and kept all the secrets of a family that refused to give up on each other. The story of the Thompson-Miller family had become legend in the community, not as a fairy tale where everything is perfect from the start, but as real proof that true love is stronger than any adversity, any injustice, any separation. And whenever someone asked what the secret to their happiness was, Jessica would answer with the wisdom acquired over the years. The secret isn't never going through hardships. The secret is never losing hope, always being willing to forgive, and remembering that true love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice we make every day to fight for those we love. It was a lesson that had taken years of suffering to learn, but one that now guided not only her family, but all families who were touched by their story of redemption, forgiveness, and unconditional love. End of story. And now, dear listener, we would like to know your opinion on this touching story. Do you believe Jessica made the right decisions? How would you react if you were in Michael's place upon discovering the truth? Tell us in the comments what moved you the most in this journey of family reunion. Your opinion is very important to us. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one.